So let me go back now to the business of the day and invite Zipporah Wambua, our presenter for the day. Zipporah is the Director of Participatory Development in Makueni County Government, one of the counties in the Republic of Kenya. And she's graciously prepared to come and lead in our discussion. So we'll give her some bit of time, then I will come in and then have a discussion towards the end of our presentation. Again, I don't want to say much more than this about Dr. Wambua. She, of course, has a lot more she can say about herself, and I'll let the floor be open to her. And so let's welcome Zipporah. Welcome. Proceed.
Thank you very much, everybody, and a good morning to everybody from every part of the world. I am privileged to be the presenter this very day here, which is Valentine's Day. So I'm grateful to present a beautiful flower of accountability mechanisms in community development as our Valentine's flower from this side of the world. Kindly accept that. My name is Zipporah Wambua, thank you. My name is Zipporah Wambua from Kenya, from one of the subnationals, the county government of Makueni County. And I was grateful when I saw that we have representatives in this forum that as well come from Makueni County and probably would be able to concur with some of the practical statements that I will be making. From a government perspective, I am really grateful and always honored to be part of the Association for Community Development Practitioners because of my own interpretation, which as well has become the spirit behind my understanding on the call for devolution. And that informs, if we go to the next slide, that informs my understanding about the constitutional requirements and as well as what it means to talk about democracies in the developing and the developed world. The reason is because when we talk about democracy, we are talking about the ultimate or the sovereign power belonging to the people, but we are not talking about that power just for political purposes. We are talking about the power for people to develop and to get development and to get sustainable development. That is the context within the discussion that I'm going to have today. Going to the next slide is my personal analysis of the accountability challenges that we are facing globally, and more so specifically from a Kenyan context. In my analysis is that we have not attained accountability in community development, whether as governments or as non-governmental organizations. We are still experiencing governance problems. Whose project does this belong to? Who sustains when a project is vandalized? Who benefits from decisions that are made? And who participates in the decision? We are all suffering the main problem of diminishing funds that has continued to lead to budget allocation problems, little diminishing own source revenue, as well as diminishing transfers from the national government for those that are from the subnationals. And even those that are in the non-state actors, the models of transfer of funds from the donors to the organization, we are all challenged within that main area in terms of accountability. There have always been challenges around what we are doing and the flow of funds, including the service delivery itself. You're talking about whose project is it? Awareness, we have challenges of access to information. And some of these key there are key problems that are emerging from lack of accountability. And the effects as well, we find we continue finding ourselves in a situation of corruption, underdevelopment, poor indicators in human development, because the focus for accountability is not clear, it's not clarified. And therefore, really thanking the organization for the opportunity to see that this special sitting is focused on accountability for community-led development. I am not negating the fact that there are huge institutions that are established maybe by governments, international bodies, like the ICC, International Criminal Court, the national entities like the IACD, the anti-corruption, the DCI offices, and all other protocols that have been established. But I am trying to look at accountability from the position of community development. Let's go to the next stage, please. And therefore, with that is my assumption that community and for the assumption that the opportunity for community development practitioners to reflect today on the matter of accountability in development provides a platform for learning on our own role in transforming our societies, our development space, because we are all in different spheres of development, whether government, whether non-state actors, or NGOs. And by having this opportunity to reflect around accountability becomes a momentous event. Let's go to the next slide, please. And therefore, with that, I want to begin by defining the word accountability. In my view, the accountability is about the obligation of power holders to hold to account for the decisions or the actions in contact or in performance. I am talking about the obligation of power holders to account for their actions, whether it is the rules that they have set, presentation, including the performance, whether they perform for the purposes of public interest, with the purpose of enhancing efficiency, and with the purpose of enhancing effectiveness. Hence, community development, in my view, is the process where community members take that collective action on issues of importance. In my view, this concept is rooted in the belief that communities have potential to meet their needs, but they lack the power to execute due to lack of funds, and therefore defines the role of the community development practitioner as a facilitator to the development. Let's go to the next page. I have identified two key accountability relations. There is upward vertical relationship and horizontal relationships. In vertical relationships, I am talking about the bureaucracy of our reporting nature, whether within government or outside government, and the vertical relations that have to do with the relationships of the beneficiaries of community development and stakeholders that we find ourselves engaging for the purposes of community development work. Let's go to the next. The importance, even as I begin to dive into the nitty-gritties of accountability and development, is that what we are looking for as community development practitioners is to improve governance, which I've said is a key challenge within the community development practice. We want to increase the effectiveness of our development so that we can account for the value for money, as well as meeting the objectives of the projects or implementation of programs that we would like to implement across the globe. And lastly, the importance of empowerment of the people. Community development cannot go away outside empowerment of the people. In fact, The real goal for community development is therefore the empowerment of the people. Let's go to the next stage, please. And therefore, from my assimilation is as a government officer, as I said earlier, is that there is a close connection between where I sit as a government officer on accountability in community development and the context of devolution. Many countries across the globe are going towards devolution, especially the developing countries. And most of us are from those developing countries. We are anxious to see what devolution offers. We are anxious to see new presidents coming on board to try to crack the constitutional requirements for devolution. In the Kenyan context, therefore, there is a quest for constitutional reviews that led to the promulgation of the Constitution of Kenya in the year 2010, and its implementation began in 2013. Of importance to the provisions of that constitution were the objectives of devolution that are articulated in Article 174 of the County Constitution of Kenya. If you listen to these key objectives of devolution, you will see the link and how the Constitution, particularly for the case of Kenya, addresses accountability in community development and sees government, and especially county governments, not just practicing top-down development, but demonstrating community development, which is my interpretation of the practice and the principles of devolved service delivery, as well as the public participation principle, of which I am the director in charge. And therefore, the key objectives are to promote the democratic and accountable exercise of power. We are talking about power sharing between the government and the people. The principles also talk about giving powers of self-governance to the people and enhancing their participation in the exercise of the powers of the states, not just voting for political reasons, but communities being given the powers, the delegation, and the control, power to control, and even to organize themselves for self-governance and self-development. Recognizing, therefore, the rights of communities to manage their own development and to further their development, protecting and promoting the interests and the rights of the minorities. We're talking about the marginalized communities, promoting the social and economic development, and the provision of proximity, the principle of subsidiarity, ensuring that development is accessible to the people. Show me a different definition of community development than this that the laws in Kenya try to articulate. And next is enhancing the equitable sharing of national and local resources to ensure that beyond proximity, there is equality of development, then the decentralization of the state organs, functions and services to the lowest level possible, and enhancing checks and balances and the separation of powers. Next. Therefore, as I continue, the second modeling of what I see accountability in community development is deeply rooted in the constitutional principles of public participation. Here I'm talking about promoting direct engagement of citizens in county decision-making processes, in the making of the laws of the county, in budgeting, and in the implementation. We are talking about promoting social accountability as a citizen-led action, providing that space and opportunity, and as you can see in the picture, so that communities have an opportunity to hold public officials and their service providers to account for their duties and for their performance. And lastly, to promote citizen participation in the implementation process. Next. The accountability in community development in the context of devolution, therefore, from my own perspective, is explaining the reasons why decisions are made, how they are made, and taking responsibility for mistakes while held accountable, while responding to questions about the actions of government, and you can add of any development entity that is working among the community. The importance of accountability then cannot be overestimated. Without an effective accountability system, devolution will not deliver its promises, as I have read or demonstrated from the Kenyan context. Let's go to the next page. So before us is the ladder of public participation as provided by Jerry Astins. It is a practice. The model of public participation in Makueni County is anchored on this model. And the reason is because, as you can see from the ladder, we would like to see, or we envision, that the principles inscribed in the Constitution as demonstrated in the objectives of devolution, and also the principle of participation as inscribed in the Constitution, is that we move from non-participation, which is manipulation, therapy, plasation, where governments or development workers would just want communities to rubber stamp what they have brought on board, but provide an opportunity for consultations, and even beyond consulting and ensuring the PWD is represented, the marginalized is presented, the youth is presented, the children's voice is heard, the women are heard. Beyond that, enhancing a participation model that is accountable in nature through a partnership model, that communities feel we are beyond being consulted. We are partners with this organization, we are partners with this government, and they sometimes have delegated power in order to be part, and especially in resource allocations. They feel, and even in the planning for our strategic plans, that they feel they have delegated autonomy or power to enable them feel that we were able to present this need, and we were able to be part and parcel of the design of the project, and therefore we feel that the project outcome is part of our dream. That kind of an ownership that is leading to citizen power is, in my view, the level of participation that would enhance the accountability in community development that I'm talking about. Next. Some of the great literatures that I have reflected around over the years are the literatures by Robert Chambers. Of course, there are many community development books and literatures, but I am thrilled by the fact that Robert Chambers has argued for the central issues in development that have been overlooked over the years, and that in the past eras that have flowed from domination of power, when governments, when organizations, even claiming community development practitioners, have withheld the powers of the communities and made decisions on behalf of the communities, and therefore not enhanced the kind of accountability we are talking about in this forum. One of the key books is the Rural Development, that seeks about putting the last first, and whose reality counts, putting the first last, which all advocate that development professionals should be able to embrace new approaches and methods of interacting and learning and knowing. And that is why we are unable to detach the principle of public participation, accountability with community development practice. Next. There are various accountability mechanisms and tools. I will be going through some of them, but the slide here just demonstrates a few of the accountability tools that are available, and especially that I have utilized even at the county government level. And some of them are the community scorecards, social audits, public expenditure tracking surveys, independent budget analysis, gender responsive budget analysis, public revenue monitoring, citizen charters, citizen report cards, public hearings, and the new kid in the block in Kenya, in the Kenyan development context, participatory budgeting. So I will be mentioning some of these mechanisms and some of these tools shortly, beginning from the next slide. So the first slide concerning the tools is talking about the community scorecard. Community scorecard is a tool that enables communities to rate public service and performance of the service providers. Giving an example of a health facility that communities would like to know, where have we failed? What has not been done to enable this health facility to meet our needs, and therefore being able to give feedback to the service provider in order to improve the quality, the efficiency, and the effectiveness. I have tried to demonstrate the phases, which I may not go into details right now. I've tried to elaborate the details of how a community scorecard has been enabled. But just to mention that as a county government, and with the integration and interpretation that public participation is core to devolved service delivery and therefore interpreted as community development, is to say that some of these tools, like the community scorecards, have enabled us to be able to determine what kind of a health center do we need. Should it have a maternity? Should it have a dental unit? And around the numbers of beneficiaries within that population, a scorecard is able to assist us see the gaps and also be rated in terms of the levels of health or any other service that we are providing. Next. The next one is about the social audits, which is particular concerning the involvement of the people in collecting information on public resources and how they have been used in delivering services. The information is analyzed and can be shared to the departments or to the service providers. Therefore, the purpose, especially for social audits, is to ensure that resources are used to meet social objectives of the communities. Many times we do not foresee the social objectives while doing development or even the community development projects. We look at the infrastructure and then we go beyond that and see the fiscal in terms of how much funding is required. And little do we go to look at the social impact of such a project, and especially speaking from a government perspective. And therefore, social audits enable us to collect information by the public and see how they interpret an intervention and how it affects their social lives, which is a very important tool in terms of accountability. Next. The next one is public expenditure tracking surveys, or what we call PETs. And PETs are tools that will enable us to track the flow of public resources, financial or human or in kind, because of disaster, emergency responses, humanitarian responses, whether government or non-government, to be sure that they reach the intended beneficiary at the point of the service delivery. Because many times the communities may have the approved projects, they could have the amount allocated to the project, but without the public expenditure tracking survey, they are not able to tell how much of that allocation was able to reach the intended recipient. And therefore, public expenditure tracking surveys enable us to improve the quality of service delivery at the local level by generating knowledge among service users. A good example is that citizens are able to analyze and even monitor how that money has reached. They can quantify, we have received the water, we are fetching the water, and therefore the 5 million allocated to that project, we can see and we can testify that it is having an impact, and that's value for money. Next. Gender responsive budget analysis is another accountability tool in community development that I introduced to us, whose purpose is to ensure that whether government spending or an organization's spending is enabled or is able to serve the needs and the priorities of both men and women. That is, with the purpose of reducing gender inequalities. One of the key SDGs is about gender equality. So gender responsive budgets are not separate budgets for women, no, but they are general budgets that are planned, approved, executed, monitored, and even evaluated in a gender sensitive way. I would like to see a water project that has been delivered by a development partner, and the women are saying, because of this water, I am able to get water within this specific period of time, hence reducing the distances to the water points and enabling me to continue with other household chores or economic activities. Now, such a project is gender sensitive. If we do not take to account the gender responsiveness by generally subjecting our implementations or even our budgets to the gender responsive budgeting accountability, then we are not able to see how we are promoting gender equality in our execution. Next. The next one is about public revenue monitoring. Although monitoring of revenue looks more as an institutional requirement for governments, I want to submit to us that it is an accountability tool that enables the communities to take responsibility and be exposed to information and knowledge concerning what their government has collected and how it has been utilized. And therefore, revenue monitoring enables the citizens to know how much money is at the disposal of their government and how the revenue collected has been spent. In every budgeting, we have at the county level what we call the revenue projections. It is important for communities to know what are the projections and receive reports about how their contributions to that tax is therefore leading to implementation of projects and programs and services that are coming back to them. Therefore, as governments collect revenue using their authorities, others using directorates, others using other entities, it is important for us to know that communities ought to know, and they ought to be part of the decisions that are to be made to determine the utilization of those funds. Next. The last one is the citizen report card. And in citizen report card, we are simply talking about communities provided an opportunity to provide feedback to government officials after evaluating a direct experience or an observation or a feeling that they have had about a particular project. It is a way of enabling the citizens to take opinions, their own opinion, and their experiences about the quality of service delivery, because they are the beneficiaries of this project. and then be able to present them to the concerned office so that the concerned office is able to reciprocate, do corrections, do amendments, or do whatever it takes for them to enhance that which seems to be a gap within a particular project. So this information is obtained directly by citizens or a group of civil society or a group of communities themselves being able to write, being able to investigate and do a report and providing it to the public service or to any development entity as their view of the gaps and observations for purposes of improvement. Next. The new kid in the block in the last 3-4 years in Kenya, we have been enhancing the practice of participatory budgeting. And I classify participatory budgeting as a form of accountability mechanism in community development, because beyond the budgeting and beyond all the other processes that I have talked about that are particular to a certain process, participatory budgeting looks at the entire process from the identification of the needs, enabling communities to think through their needs, present their priorities and interventions, provide an opportunity for technical teams to interface around and provide the priorities correctly with proper funding, and leading to prioritization of the proposals, voting of the priorities against the available budget for the particular year, and then the ability to fund the winning projects together with the people. By this form of or model of accountability, and my view of it being a holistic model of accountability, is that, for example, here at the county government, we are able to begin the annual development plans with the people and move to the county fiscal strategy paper, which is a paper that demonstrates the review of the implementation of the previous year and projections of a new particular year. We are able to do that participatorily together with the people. And close to that is the third step of the budgeting, where there is proper presentation of proposals for a particular year and the voting that leads to the annual budget. In the context of Makueni County, is that we have established a structure of public participation, which is also the system for accountability in development for the devolved service delivery, and which has also been utilized by other non-state actors, CBOs, and development entities, so that they ensure that the execution of whatever projects they are doing are community-led, they are community-owned, and they are community-managed. And therefore, participatory budgeting as a form of citizen participation is a very powerful tool that involves the citizens in the entire process of identifying what is to be funded, how it shall be funded, and how it was executed. And therefore, communities find their key role in ensuring scrutiny and monitoring of the formulation, the execution, including the reporting of the budgets. Next. And therefore, as I come to a conclusion, dear practitioners, is to remind us that our primary responsibility for community development practitioners is to enable, is to animate, it is to guide communities in the journey for poverty reduction and self-reliance. I therefore suggest that we look for integrated approaches through which accountability is demonstrated through the community development cycle. So we ought to be at the forefront in influencing through, number one, ensuring that the voices of the affected are represented in the decision-making table, in the implementation of the decisions, whether plans, programs, and projects, and in the review of the same. And number two is to ensure that we are deliberate, to ensure accountability mechanisms and tools are part and parcel of the community development processes. From a practice here in Makueni and from where I sit at the Department of Devolution, has been to ensure that communities are well organized for the entire decision-making processes. And that's why I have advocated today for the practice of participatory budgeting as an accountability mechanism that takes governments around the entire cycle. From where I sit, therefore, as a county government, we have founded a school called the Kenya School for Devolution and Community-Led Development. Its main purpose is to ensure that communities, and including government officers, are equipped with capacity in community development so that we are able to demonstrate community development practice through the principle of public participation for devolved service delivery. Thank you very much for listening to me. Asanteni sana.
Thank you very much, Zipporah, for the wonderful presentation. And colleagues, can you applaud our presenter for a job well done? Yeah, I believe you'll agree with me that's a time well spent in, for some of us, a refresher on these accountability processes, and to a large extent also on the whole framework of participatory development. And we have been called to action by Zipporah, and I believe these are called to all of us as community development practitioners, that at the end of the day, our work in community development practice has its root in accountability, as the analogy comes through from the tree. Accountability, when it is there, you can be assured there is going to be development, and some of these challenges that development is about addressing will be sorted out. But equally, lack of accountability is also at the root of lack of achievement of most of the ideals that we work towards in community development. And so, but again, the whole analogy of bringing the discourse that Robert Chambers has been pushing through for all these many years. Is it the last first, or is it the first last? Ultimately, what the discussion is about is enabling us to exercise our citizenship and being able to exercise our agency and also use our voice to get things happening in the way they ought to be, and to a large extent to have horizontal accountability and also vertical accountability, so that we can have processes that ultimately optimize on the use of the resources that we have, both monetary and all other resources that are available for community development. And from IACD, the rallying call is always that you can't have national development without community development. But the discussion now is today is that you can't have community development if there is no accountability. And accountability will also come in only when the citizens can be able to exercise their sovereignty and therefore exercise their agency and voice. To an extent, Zipporah has drawn from the Kenyan Constitution, but if you look at the spirit of the Kenyan Constitution and you apply it, and you look at also the constitutions of the countries represented in this discussion, you find the same spirit comes through, because again, all this comes from the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, where again, we are called upon to exercise our mandate as global citizens to ensure that we can live responsibly and hold each other and the institutions that we establish as communities and the society to account. So thank you very much, Zipporah, for leading us through. And we have had some comments, a lot of appreciation, and I've indicated the presentation is going to be available on IACD website. And those who registered for the webinar, we have your email addresses. We'll be able to share the slides with you. And Zipporah has graciously agreed that this be done. So we don't take it for granted. It's a lot of work, and thanks so much, so that we can continue again to sharpen each other. There was one comment from John, if that becomes the starting point on the chat, that is, Zipporah, maybe you can share some examples of how all this works in Makueni in a minute or two. Because it's very easy to have the story, but in terms of practical examples, how does this work? If you could pick just a case or a project in Makueni, and then you can take us through, for instance, through the project cycle and how issue aspects of accountability are crystallized. And then the colleagues, you can put your questions on the wall, but then I'll also open the floor so that you can voice your comments. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Briefly, how accountability is practically integrated within the development cycle here at Makueni County is, number one, from the initiation of a project. And that's why I talked about participatory budgeting. The CIDP, which is the County Integrated Development Plan, is developed through the people. And I'm talking about people at the villages, not people in towns and in big hotels, people under the trees, being able to say, this is our need, we need it prioritized. This is our vision in the next 3 years, in the next 10 years. We want to see a village that has water in every household, that has roads well done in every household. So from that vision, we draw the integrated development plans as well as the annual development plans for the county. Next to that step is the step for the county fiscal strategy paper. From a government practice, the fiscal strategy paper enables every department to determine the ceilings for the year. That ceiling is determined from the participatory processes of the people. We develop tools that collect and analyze the issues, the priorities, and the proposed interventions for the people, and therefore they met the basis to which a sector will say this is the project that we shall be identifying. And therefore, when we come now to the tail end of the budget, we take back the physical strategy paper to the people, remind them about the priorities they prioritized against the ceilings that were provided, and now they are able to prioritize against this particular bread basket or the financial basket from the national and our own source revenue. Together, we are able to say, this is what we can afford. And therefore, mostly, you realize for most communities, priority number 1, 2, 3, and 4 mostly are able to go into that particular budget for the year. And the rest are shelved to await for an intervention by a non-state actor or the next budgeting in the next year. Then from that, all these decisions are being done through the structure of public participation. For proper accountability, there must be champions within the communities that understand and that are able to be the voices of the rest of the community. At the implementation stage, therefore, we are able to establish what we call project management committees. These are the eyes of the people at the project site. They are able to go through trainings concerning the BOQ, and they are able to use the BQ to continue implementing or monitoring the implementation. After the project is completed, the project is handed over to an existing organization, or we create a new committee that is called the Project Sustainability Committee. The purpose for this committee is to be a caretaker on behalf of the community to ensure the utilization, continuous enhancement of the project. And throughout the year, for example, when I'm talking about a water project, I am talking about a project that people say we identified it, We said what the objectives were. It found its way to the budget. We had our own community members being project management committees, and now it was handed over to us. And now we are operating as a CBO that is managing the day-to-day utilization of the water and are enhancing all other requirements to ensure the proper utilization for the project. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Zipporah, for taking us through the cycle of developing the CIDP, the County Integrated Development Program plan, and also the physical paper, where to a large extent we are talking about the framework through which people are able to initially make contact with the government, then they voice their priorities on the basis of already a resource envelope that is declared right from the start, so that we are not talking about what we want in the absence of knowledge of what resources are available. And at that point, accountability starts. And then, of course, as Zipporah is indicating, when the project is also getting finished and everybody wants to be paid, again, there is also the voice of the community as represented by the project implementation committee, so that then by the time the check is being signed, the community is satisfied the project has been completed to their satisfaction. And that's the whole process of accountability from the community, and also to a large extent, then the government agencies and actors are also know that they are going to be held to account for what they do in expending the resources that are made available for the benefit of the people and the county to a large extent. And so thank you very much. I hope that's okay, John. There were two other questions, and I think a quick one from Paul from Canada, who is asking, how do you ensure sustainability? And then there's a question from Kesue Ogato from Nigeria, who is asking about how to tap and maintain interests of communities on government projects so that there is continuous participation. Over to you.
Thank you very much. I begin with the first question concerning the question of sustainability. One, the first factor of sustainability is that over the years, now this is the 11th year of devolution in Kenya. In Makueni County, the communities have been able to see, they have been able to appreciate, and therefore have trust with the government that the decisions they make and the accountability they hold government has been able to bring fruits. They are able to now see there is a physical dam, there is a physical health center, projects that they suggested, projects that they managed that are operational. So that has provided the pride for communities to know and to sustain the public participation, that when they are invited, they see the decisions being implemented. Number two is that there is continuous community feedback. When you do not provide feedback to communities, you lose their trust. We have ensured that there is continuous community feedback. Citizen budgets are made. Immediately after the budget, the communities have citizen versions of what they brought forth so that they begin thinking ahead. And therefore, that kind of feedback enables, and it has sustained the quest for participation in the county. And lastly, therefore, is the institutional framework put in place by the government to ensure participation. As I've said, I'm the director in charge of the matters of participatory development, and with an institutional office from the county headquarters all the way to the ward where the people are, alongside the county administration, which goes all the way to the village level. So that administrative representation of public officers in the villages has been able to trigger the zeal for participation, because they can complain when they want, they can get access to information when they want, and therefore that proximity has sustained the model. And lastly, therefore, is the capacity development as a sustaining model. because when communities don't know what to prioritize, how to prioritize, they will in time be able to get tired of the participatory processes and even the accountability processes when they do not see what they are holding accountable for is not being responded to. And therefore, the establishment for the School for Devolution and Community-Led Development here in the county is a value addition to the practice to ensure both government officials and learn what they were used to in terms of top-down development, and they are able to learn the new way of integrating community development into public practice, as well as communities, so that they are more capacity built. How do they hold public service accountable? How do they undertake participatory budgeting? Even how do they undertake other initiatives that are at the county level towards self-actualization, self-governance, and self-development? Thank you.
Thank you very much. And to a large extent, I believe you've responded to Ogato's question about tapping interest of communities, in the sense of you indicating that the communities are part and parcel of the journey from the start to the end, and then the aspect of having an institutional mechanism which then is robust and is able to be continuously in touch with communities, and the communities can be continuously in touch with the institutional mechanisms from the grassroots all the way to the higher offices, so that then issues that need to be sorted out can be sorted out, and the communities can see what they said needed to be done is being done, and when it is finished, of course, it is now their project, it is their community that is getting developed, or development is taking place in their community, and therefore that in itself, it gives a lot of hope and encouragement to pursue and to continue to partner amongst themselves, and as they voice their concerns and the priorities, and also as they also partner with the government, also to ask and indicate what more needs to be done in the name of community development or development in their communities. I'm opening the floor for people to voice their concerns.
Well, Dan, maybe I should come in here. I want to join others in appreciating the presentation by Zipporah. It shows a lot of experience, and as somebody commented earlier, plenty of information to digest on this issue. I want to thank our job well done, as well as the anchor himself, Dr. Dan. Thank you so much for a very good outing. Now, I asked a question, and that has to do with perhaps the Kenya example is a very good one, worthy of emulation, because there are institutional mechanisms right up to the county level. That may not be exactly the situation here in Nigeria. That's why I was wondering, those deployment of those accountability tools, we find a situation here where there is a high level of lacuna. The communities are not so organized to that extent as to hold either their political leaders or government to issues. They are not even aware of the budgeting mechanism or what was budgeted for particular projects. So that was why I was asking, maybe from the Kenya experience, how exactly has it been done to get the communities well organized so as to be aware, take a particular interest? Because here, the best governance at whatever level is just left to do what they like to do. The accountability tools are there, but they are never deployed because there's this lukewarm attitude. So that was exactly what I wanted to learn from the Kenya experience. How communities get involved to ask for accountability on the part of leaders at whatever level. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof. And I believe, okay, you broke a bit, but I think we got the question. And I don't want to put this one to Zipporah. I see a lot of Kenyans on board, and many of the colleagues here, again, are community development practitioners. I want to ask you, colleagues from community development practice in Kenya. If you can respond, how do we get our communities organized to the point that they're able to hold government systems into account, so that then this can be lessons for, as Okato is indicating, for Nigeria and the rest of the other countries. The Kenyans on board. Any comment?
I think I can begin them off by sharing 3 key things. Number one is that there has to be proper legal instruments, frameworks that enable the commitment of a nation to accountability can only happen if there is a tool, there's a legal instrument in terms of law or a framework that is authorized that enables the establishment of the structures, the operationalization of the structures. The Kenyan example is that even at the Kenyan parliament, even currently the president, because of the legal framework, he has been able to be turned down some of the decisions that are made for reasons of the threshold for public participation. It therefore means without the absence of a legal framework guiding any particular country, then there is a gap. And number two is the institutional framework. There has to be somebody that facilitates, that is responsible to ensure it happens. It is easy to have the structures, but it is easy for entities to sit back and say, this is even the level of participation they want to be. But if there is an institutional framework of who is responsible and the coordination mechanism, then it shall be possible. And lastly is the capacity. Even from a government perspective, accountability is new because it was left to IACD, DCI, the criminal investigation units earlier on. But now, when we begin integrating and looking at capacities and the space for communities, then it begins enabling communities to be in the central space in the accountability. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I still open the floor to Kenyans to input on this, how we have been able to manage to get participation happening. Professor Abdul,
Hello.
You want to say something?
Yes, sir.
Let me hear Professor Abdul Amidu, and then I'll come to you, Abdullah.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Am I audible enough?
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much for that presentation. I just want to chip a little contribution. Really, in Nigeria, the accountability mechanism is being done at the level of state. For example, we have in my own state, Kaduna State, we have the open government partnership. And in the open government partnership, we have what we call Community Development Charter, which has been signed and it is recognized. So, for example, I'm also a member of one of the members of the World Community Integrity Champion. What we do is we track our development efforts right from the budget up to the execution level. That's what is happening right now, and it is being championed under auspices of Open Government Partnership, which is a United Nations intervention program carried out Kaduna State Government. And we are also into social protection system. Right now, we are working hard to see that the social protection system is also being integrated in the budget. So what we do is that periodically, every budget, before it's being presented, we have input from the community. The Community Development Charter has what we call community portal, demand portal. So we go to the communities and then demand and then key into the portal so that it can be captured in the budget. So in summary, that's what we are doing. And it's my intention one of these days to come and present that in our own section here, in the IST seminar series. Thank you.
Thanks, Prof. And I can schedule you for July. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I'll be happy.
Okay, Abdullah.
Yes, good morning. Hello.
Good morning, good afternoon.
Yeah, good afternoon. Sorry, good. How are you? Thank you for the organizers for organizing such a good webinar. It's very informative and very educative, and it touched on the reality on the ground today at community. I appreciate the work done by Zipporah at Makueni County government. She has, used the exact way of, engaging community. Thank you for that. I had a question. Since the introduction of the county government, there's a lot of challenges. So in some counties, you'll find there are some political interferences because maybe somebody has been campaigning for the governor before the election. There were pre-promises, pre-election promises. So sometimes projects are being interrupted by such scenarios. Kindly, how can we overcome those challenges? Because they have a basis in politics. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Abdullah. Okay, Zipporah, you can take that.
Maybe I can just add.
Okay, John.
Yeah, firstly, Zipporah, to thank you again. That was great. And I think it's similar to my earlier comment because, I mean, I've not looked at every county, but I would like to think Makueni is one of the counties that's way ahead of many others with some of these issues. And I'm always hearing good stories. But I'm just wondering, how can you influence other counties more? Is that possible? You know, because we've heard about political interference, issues of corruption and so on. But I just wonder how these good practice examples can be amplified more, you know, for others to learn from. And not just in Kenya, beyond as well.
Okay, thank you very much, John. How can we learn from Makueni? How can we make the case of Makueni be the case for the remaining 46 counties and the rest of the other counties across the region and Africa? So those are two questions, one from John and then the other one from Abdullah. How do we insulate all this from political interference?
Thank you very much for the great questions. One of the key things I think is critical is still the continuous conversation for the community development practitioners. It still trickles down, what is a critical role we can do ourselves to enhance community development practice within our context? Do counties or does the national government have a policy on community development, for example? We can be of influence at this level to be able to champion such a policy and a bill that even establishes us as an institution, recognizes us, and so that we are able to speak at the national space in a broader and in a deeper way. Number two is that John is, and I like that because today and from Wednesday, actually from Monday, I've been hosting the Mombasa Civil Society Network here at the School for Community-Led Development. They have been here studying about the participatory budgeting model and the accountability mechanisms. And sure enough, what you are saying as the teething problems of Mombasa are the same things this civil society group brought to the table, and that is what we are dialoguing. They are not with me here at the center today. They have gone to particular projects to interact with the project management committees and see how that can be done. And therefore, there is an opportunity for counties and governments to study and learn from Makueni County. 3 months ago in November, we hosted the government of Zimbabwe. The reason is because the current president after being elected, he had part of his manifesto proclaiming that he would like to implement the aspects of devolution within their new law. And therefore, through the World Bank, we were able to come and study here in Makueni County. And through the World Bank, there is a partnership to ensure the transformation and the outlook of devolution is going to happen within the 3 years of the agreements that we have had. And therefore, one aspect is that we can study from each other. We are not lone rangers. We study these models from India among the Panchayat Raj. I have traveled to India alongside some staff to see how the self-governance structures called the Panchayat Raj looks like in India. We have traveled to Port Alegre to see the participatory budgeting processes and how they are done and how the accountability is done. And therefore, if we learn together, we are able to develop what is contextually possible for our different countries and different contexts. And lastly, the political interference still continues to be a challenge for all of us. And that is why the root cause and why I underpinned that it is accountability, and we should work hard, even as an association, to ensure our voices are heard. Our institutions, the judiciary, the institutions required to speak even at national level are strengthened well enough, as well as the citizen voice. It is our responsibility to ensure the voices are so heard. Any governor that requires his projects to be done, he should clearly demonstrate them in the manifesto. After a governor comes to power, the county integrated development plan should demonstrate an integration of the governor's dreams for the county, so that we shift from politics to the interpretation of that we are implementing the county integrated development plan. That way, then we set out the county assembly to autonomously maintain their 3 functions of legislation, representation, and accountability, and therefore leaving the executive to be able to execute the CIDP. This is not easy, especially in the African context, but through advocacy, through continuous learning, we shall be able to be there, because even the developed countries were still where we were a years back. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Zipporah, for actually summarizing all that you've said. And of course, what is important is what are the lessons we are taking forward, and the sharing about the benchmarking and the learning, peer learning is an important learning point or takeaway for us, so that we need to learn from those who have already made some headway, so that then we don't reinvent the wheel. And Zipporah has indicated, of course, having legal mechanisms is a good thing. Having institutional mechanism is in place is good, and the building the capacity is also good. But also, let's also appreciate the Kenyan culture of self-organizing through self-help movement, through the women's movement. That makes it also a lot more easier to work with organized groups, so as the legal mechanisms are put in place. And also the aspect of enforcement, because it's one thing to have the legal mechanisms and the requirements for accountability, but if it is left now to the criminal justice system alone, it doesn't go very far. We need to have all the voices on deck, so that then we can exercise our citizenship and get governance working for collective development. And so thank you very much. And next, of course, is a March webinar. Is again every second Wednesday of the month are the days of our webinar at 11 a.m. Kenyan time. And so the next one is going to be on ABCD approach and sustainable livelihoods in April. Nowadays, we are talking about the whole issue of information and communications technology and the aspect of artificial intelligence is become quite significant. And so April will be discussing the interface between artificial intelligence and community development. And so, and of course, we will share more information for the rest of the webinars downstream. So be on the lookout for these webinars. For the local network, the ACPDK, Association for Community Development Practitioners, we have a webinar coming in on 28th of February at 12 noon. The topic is on disability inclusion in community development. We'll be sharing the information. And of course, our colleagues from the region and beyond will also share the information with us. And so thank you very much. And let's also thank Jessica, who woke up so early in the morning, all the way from Latin America to host us. Jessica is our administrator at IACD and currently based in Chile in Latin America. Thank you so much, Jessica, and we appreciate the sacrifice. And the colleagues, again, who woke up from far regions just to join us in at times ungodly hours, we really appreciate. And lastly, of course, Zipporah, thank you for being our facilitator today. We really appreciate. The forum is about us sharpening each other. If you have a topic of interest, get in touch. We'll schedule you and you do your presentation and we learn together. So thank you very much and have a good day and a good morning, good evening, wherever you are. Be blessed. The recording is going to be available on our IACD website once it is processed. Thank you very much and a round of applause for all of us as we exit.